The following message is transmitted at the request of Dr. Ron Paul. It's happening. I tried to warn you, but you looked away. You asked for this, but you only had to listen. I could have saved you. I tried to warn you. You looked away. You asked for this. You played your bet. Now lie in it. It didn't have to end like this. It's happening. It didn't have to be like this. It's happening. You could have prevented this.
I got a subpoena today.
Oh,
First subpoena ever. Served district court in Washington, served here where I live. And it has to do with what veteran intelligence professionals for sanity and I personally have written about the fact, it's not speculation, the fact that there was no Russian hack of the DNC, but that it was an inside job.
Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, they just are pushing the fabrication that the government has pushed upon us in the Mueller indictment.
Now, the forensics that we have, due to the fact that we're blessed by two, not one, but two former technical directors of the NSA and other volunteer forensic investigators, show that it had to be a thumb drive download with physical access to the DNC computer or server, okay?
Bill Binney says they have the evidence of if Russia indeed hacked the DNC.
of course, which is the biggest joke, really, that whole story.
For them to have blamed Russia for Hillary Clinton's own horrible campaign.
They lost because they cheated with Bernie Sanders, you know, they completely rigged the whole process. And that is also why these leaks took place, not because of some Russian hack. It was actually a DNC insider who was a Bernie supporter who saw what was happening, the manipulation that took place, and said, I can't accept this. You know, and that is how the information ultimately ended up with WikiLeaks. It wasn't a Russian hack.
This person reached out to you, is that what I understand?
Yeah.
But again, it's this Department of Justice, the FBI, and the CIA, and all of them coming together to concoct lies to get rid of people they don't like or people they want to silence.
The allegation that the DNC emails were hacked by somebody in Russia. Well, some of the people who are looking at the data now are finding what is called FAT32 format. Which is file allocation table format. That's a format used to index data on a storage device, which means it implies that those data, that DNC data, was taken down onto a thumb drive or some other storage device that was attached to the computer.
The way that happened is I formed a political party in New Zealand called the Internet Party. And in an interview, I think it was with Bloomberg or somebody else, I announced that we will have an Internet Party in the United States. And when that story came out in the United States, I was approached by a young gentleman over Twitter with the Twitter handle Panda something, and told me that he's working with the Democratic Party and he's fed up with what's going on in the United States, and he read about my internet party, and he told me that he has information that would be quite shocking if it was made public. He believed that there's massive corruption going on within the DNC. he was very concerned about voter fraud, that tools are being misused and voter fraud. So what I did, I put him in touch with someone that I know is in the data security space, that is very knowledgeable and has worked with WikiLeaks in the past. And I simply established the contact between that person and this person, and everything that happened after that is what we now know as the DNC leak/hack.
WikiLeaks never sits on material. Whistleblowers go to significant efforts to get us material, and often very significant risks. There's a 27-year-old works for the DNC who was shot in the back, murdered just 2 weeks ago for unknown reasons as he was walking down the street in Washington. So
that was just a robbery, I believe, wasn't it?
No, there's no finding. So
what are you suggesting? What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that our sources take risks, and they become concerned to see things occurring like that.
But was he one of your sources then? I mean,
we don't comment on who our sources are.
But why make the suggestion about a young guy being shot in the streets of Washington?
Because we have to understand how high the stakes are in the United States, and that our sources are, our sources face serious risks. That's why they come to us, so we can protect their anonymity.
But it's quite something to suggest a murder. That's basically what you're doing.
Well, that others have suggested that. We are investigating to understand what happened in that situation with Seth Rich. I think it is a concerning situation. There's not a conclusion yet. We wouldn't be willing to state a conclusion, but we are concerned about it.
Okay, now, what does that leave us? Well, what happened to the computer? Where's the computer?
On the same morning, they call in the Fed. The Feds get through, and here's what they find. This is according to the FBI report. What they find is he makes first of all, you have to know some basic facts. One of the basic facts is there's no DNC or Podesta email that exists beyond May 22nd, May 21st, 22nd. It's the last email for either one of those groups. And so what the report says that sometime in late spring, we're talking about June, summer's in June 21st. Late spring would be after, I presume, I don't know. I just say it says late spring, early summer. He makes contact with WikiLeaks. That's in his computer, and he makes contact. They found what he had done. He had submitted a series of documents, of emails, some juicy emails from the DNC. And, by the way, all this shit about the DNC, whether hacked or wasn't hacked, but whatever happened, the Democrats themselves wrote this shit. You know what I mean? All I know is that he offered a sample, an extensive sample, I'm sure dozens of emails, and said, I want money. That later, WikiLeaks did get the password. He had a Dropbox, a protected Dropbox, which isn't hard to do. I mean, you don't have to be a wizard, IT wizard. He was certainly, he's not a dumb kid. They got access to the Dropbox. He also, and this is also in the FBI report, he also let people know with whom he was dealing. And I don't know how he dealt. I'll tell you about WikiLeaks in a second. I don't know how he dealt with the WikiLeaks and the mechanism. But he also, the word was passed according to the FBI report. I also shared this box with a couple of friends. So if anything happens to me, it's not going to solve your problem. Okay? I don't know what that means. I don't know whether he was, anyway. But WikiLeaks got access, and before he was killed, I can tell you right now, Brennan's an asshole. I've I've known all these people for years. Clapper, sort of a better guy, but now rocket scientist. The NSA guy's a fucking moron. And they, the trouble with all those guys is that the only way they're going to make it to a board or two and get, hired by SAIC to deliver some fat cat contracts is if Hillary stayed in. With Trump, they're gone. They're done. They're going to live on their pension. They're not going to make it. And I got to tell you, guys in that job, they don't want to live on their pension. They want to be on boards like they're make $600,000 for going to 4 visits. I have what they call it in my business, long-form journalism. I have a narrative of how that whole fucking thing began. I can't even begin to go. And so the question then is was there any money in the kids' finances? Did suddenly 25,000 show up? I mean, I have somebody on the inside. I've been around a long time and I read a lot of stuff. I have somebody on the inside who will go and read a file for me. Okay. And I know this person is unbelievably accurate and careful. He's a very high-level guy. He'll do a favor.
And is there any way we can get our hands on the report? Because
I know
that changes everything.
I'll tell you something. I learned a long time ago. I do have some amazing shit, but I don't use it ever because I never know a marking. I never know if there's a marking or a phrase that would trigger where it came from. So I'm careful about that stuff. And we're coming into a new age of surveillance now. I cannot get the report. I can probably get the warrant, but it won't show anything. I mean, I'm sure I can get the warrant. I know it's where it is. It'll just show they issued a warrant, which is normal. Doesn't mean shit. Really.
Yeah.
Except that it confirms something my friend told me because he said there was a warrant. And I can tell you right now, you don't need a warrant if somebody's dead. You only get it if you think there's a roommate. So that's interesting.
I'd like to have anything at all, but most importantly, this is one of the most important.
What do you mean you'd like to have a why?
Well, what I'm saying is, I would love to see if they had it. I mean, there's no reason not to see it, but the most important thing is this: there's so many people throughout Trump's, 4 years and maybe 8 years are always going to fall back on the idea that he's not legitimate and the Russians got him elected. This changes all of that.
Well, let me tell you something. This is the reason I'm pushing it. I don't want to get near I don't play politics. Obama was a piece of shit on foreign stuff. I thought he was on racial stuff. I thought he was fine, except he didn't do it. The Democrats did nothing. Trump won because the Democrats didn't do nothing for anybody. But having said that, tell me what you know. So my pen is down. You're not in the middle. I'm not quoting about anything. I know that. What do you know?
I know that JulianAssange told a friend of mine who met with her that he got the emails from Seth Rich. And he told her, and they're very personal friends, is that when that happened, I got very emotional about hearing that and feeling terrible for Seth's parents. And I initially just wanted to let the parents know because they should know what happened to their son.
Go ahead.
And that's why I started getting really into this, because then the whole thing came up about the hacking with the Russians, and I just happened to have been looking into it when that happened. And we solve a lot of problems, especially letting a mother and father know what happened to their son. And second, we solve the problem about Russians are the ones that gave the emails, because that did not happen. I know that did not happen.
Listen, I'm going to tell you something, and you're just going to have to trust me. I have what they call in my business, long-form journalism. I have a narrative of how that whole fucking thing began. It's a Brennan operation. It was an American disinformation, and the fucking president, at one point when they even started telling the press, they were back briefing the press. The head of the NSA was going and telling the press, this fucking cocksucker Rogers, was telling the press that we even know who in the GRU, the Russian Military Intelligence Service, leaked it. I mean, all bullshit. They were telling these. I worked at the New York Times for fucking years, and the trouble with the fucking New York Times is they have smart guys, but they're totally beholden on sources. If the president or the head of the CIA tells them something, they actually believe it. I was hired at the Times to go after the war, in the Vietnam War in '72, because they were just locked in. So that's what the Times is. These guys run the fucking Times. And Trump's not wrong. I mean, I wish he would calm down. Had a better press secretary. You have to be so. Trump's not wrong to think they all fucking lied about him. Mr. Butowsky, I've been doing this for. I don't mean to be rude.
Yeah, you've done a long time.
I've been doing this story since the late summer because I smelled it. I smelled it in August. Okay.
Good.
The fallback was going to be Russia, and it's. And I'll tell you right now, Putin may be a prick, but he's played a weak hand. If you play poker, he's played a weakened hand brilliantly. He's fucking smart. And there's a lot of business that can be done together. Not only international. I'm not talking about money business. I'm talking about political business. Because Putin hates the fucking ISIS as much as we do. The Russia's against religion nuts. Anyway.
But I'm just trying to get something in my hand that I can get public about.
No, hey man, listen. That's not what I'm. No. That's not what Well, I'm talking to you because my buddy Larry, who I think a lot of, and I've known for a long time, he used to teach graduate courses at American University here in Washington. He was, he's no dummy.
Yep.
I don't know if he's got a PhD or not, but he used to teach graduate courses in politics. And I remember the first time he nagged me like hell in the 80s to come speak to his class. He was still in the agency then. And when I went there, the guy speaking in front of me was William Colby, the head of the CIA. I mean, so Larry's got juice. Larry told me to call you. I call you, but I'm not trying to give you something to go to the White House with. That's not what it's about.
Right. Okay. And that's okay. That's okay.
I just need to know what you know.
All right.
Because I'm writing something. That's all.
All right.
I mean, maybe that doesn't work. If it doesn't work, we shouldn't talk. Are you kidding me? I can tell you right now, Mattis knows what I know.
There's a whole bunch of mysteries here, and Butowsky was overly clever, I guess, but he certainly elicited some stuff from Cy Hersh. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a neuralgic reaction anytime you say Seth Rich. It's like, oh, conspiracy theorist. Well, why? I mean, what we know about him is that he was disgruntled. He was working at DNC after having worked real hard for Binney, right? And who was it? The head of the DNC that took the place of Wasserman Schultz. Anyhow, she devoted her book to him. Seth Rich murdered. Well, was it because he knew too much, or I don't know. But we have enough circumstantial evidence, including from Craig Murray, the ambassador, former ambassador to Uzbekistan from the UK, who know enough about this to say, no, it wasn't a hack. We know some of the people involved. And it's going to be interesting because this subpoena that I got today, it's the weirdest thing. They're asking me for publicly available information, and they're identifying it. I feel like saying, hey, you got a live link there, download it for yourself, damn it, But they're also asking me for any other information I have about the Riches, about the hacking and all that kind of stuff. They've asked Bill Binney for the same thing. This is sort of like playing, the best defense is a good offense. And that's what I see Seth Rich's brother doing, trying to make sure that everyone is sued, everyone is preoccupied with what they wrote about this. And I don't think it's going to turn out too well once some of this stuff gets finished, the impeachment, all that kind of stuff. I think probably we'll see that there was more to the story, and that KimDotCom, who talked with Seth Rich, who exchanged at least, may have had a larger share of the truth than anybody else.
And I heard this from someone who gave me some more details. That someone well-known in New York, an activist, went to see Julian in London, as she often did, and took a message back from Julian from the embassy to bring to the Seth Rich family. And this woman was friends with Ed Butowsky and asked Ed to do it. And he found the rich family. And he rang them up to tell them what Assange had said, and that basically that your son had been responsible for this. And he says that they said, we know this already. We know what he did, but we don't want anybody to talk about this because we don't want to malign his name. We don't want to get in trouble. Shut up about it.
Look, there's a lot of speculation about what went on because there was also a financial component to this whole thing. Now, I don't understand that any money has ever changed hands. I wouldn't know about this, but it would be a potential motive why they are so aggressively fighting any kind of publication about Seth's involvement in this. And they asked me as well to cease any release of any information. And then when I honored that and I said I would only speak to a US representative if certain guarantees are provided that I'm safe and my family is safe, only under those circumstances would I provide the information. And then the rich family attacked me on that. So I followed their suggestion by their lawyers saying to me, you know, this is what we would like you to do. We followed that, and then they kept attacking me anyway. So to me, it was very, very suspicious how they have dealt with anyone who was trying to shed some light on this. And if you read between the lines and you see how they react to things and also their relationships, that the fact that this guy Berman gets involved, who is really a PR person for the DNC and now runs the whole communication strategy and defense and basically stifles any kind of conversation about this topic. The fact that the family allowed that guy to get involved when there was some, you know, at the very least, if I was the parent of Seth Rich, I would be saying, well, I mean, this whole robbery story just doesn't add up. You know, they didn't take anything. They had ample time, you know, after he was shot, just to take his watch or take a wallet or whatever, you know, I mean, it just didn't add up.
Hi everyone, this is Joel, I'm Mary, and we're Seth's parents, and we just wanted to say thank you for helping us. We're just so warmed that you would step forward and try to help us find the murderer of our son and try to find the two that killed him and make the world a safer place. Seth always believed in people helping each other and that the world would be a greater place if more people did, and we are just so happy and from the bottom of our hearts can't say thank you enough for helping us find who killed Seth. Thank you so much.
Touch with the Rich family. We talked on the telephone. I talked with Joel Rich, the father. Mary Rich was on the first telephone call, and then also their son, Aaron. And so we got to talking about it, and they had the understanding that if there was any fees that was going to be experienced if there were going to be any fees, then Ed would take care of that. And they agreed to it, and so they had me send them a contract of some type. So I just put something together, very generic, and sent it over to them. And the contract was signed by Aaron Rich, Joel, and Mary Rich. And that's when it all began. And the contract, and obviously I'll send you guys a copy of that because that's going to be very critical in this entire event. But the contract does say, I'll let you read it. It says, I can't talk to the media on behalf of the family. So we had that discussion, pretty extensive discussion, And I agreed that we all agreed I can talk to the media because they know that I talk to the media anyway as a regular, weekly thing on Fox News, but I would not be representing the family. So, for example, if I talk about an investigation or that investigation, I'll talk about it, but not speaking on behalf of the family. They made it known that they had a spokesperson, and that was it. So that was the extent of it, folks. And everything began at that point. A guy named Brad Bauman, Bauman. He is a DNC PR consultant. Now, I don't know him. I've never met him. I've never even spoke with him. Number one today, from what I hear from various people, that he's spreading all kinds of damaging, obviously, and that's his intent, and we get that. About me all over the world, literally. But that's their spokesperson. So I started working on behalf of them, trying to identify, like you would any investigation, but especially a murder investigation. You want to find out a little bit about the background of the decedent, relationships, things like that. Now, I was somewhat aware of this whole business about WikiLeaks, but I'll be honest, I wasn't totally aware of it because I've never, really followed that. I was focused solely on finding a murderer. That's all I was focused on. So the political implications of this case, I really wasn't involved with because I wasn't following it, right? But anyway, as I began to talk to, for example, Joe Rich and Mary Rich, they would share with me their thoughts on, relationships that Seth had with his girlfriend, some other friends of his, but they thought I should talk to his brother Aaron because him and Aaron was pretty close, pretty tight. So I said, okay. So I set up a call with Aaron and Molly. Molly is Aaron's wife. Molly is also an attorney. So we're talking, and they made it clear that in this investigation, no matter what happens, do not talk to anyone about any emails. And now, you keep in mind, I wasn't really aware of all this business about the emails app. And I asked the question, why? I said, why do you not want to talk about the email? And they said, well, because we know his death is not the result of anything dealing with his job. So I said, okay, fair enough, but how do you know his death isn't related to his job? And Aaron, at that point, immediately interrupted and said, because we're telling you it's not. I've done all the investigation. This is what he said. And I have all of this in the report. Just as a side note, guys, I keep what I call a running resume. So every discussion, I make notes. And I have all of that. At some point, you'll probably get all of this. But anyway, he made it clear his death was definitely not the result of email. Well, I'm not sure how you know that, but okay, I won't even think about the email. So I started setting up interviews with people who were friends of his. The bar where he was last seen the night he died. I went to that bar, and what was interesting, the first person I talked to after I talked to Joe and Aaron, my first interview was with a guy named Joe Capone, who's the manager of the bar that Seth was at the night he died, before he died. So I wanted to talk to Joe to see if he could tell me a little bit about Seth. Well, when I get there, he says, "Oh, I was expecting you." Now, I didn't call him to tell him I was coming. That's not how I operate as an investigator. I usually just pop in. He says, "Oh, I was expecting you." I said, "You were expecting me?" He said, "Yeah, Aaron just called me." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, he told me that you were coming." Now, he doesn't want us to talk anything about computers or emails. I said, "He said that?" He said, "Yeah, he just told me I can talk to you, but don't say anything about emails." I said, "Well, unless it's related to his death." He said, "No, I can't say anything about email." Now I find that awfully strange, but okay.
So we talk about relationships, and he was a real nice guy. This guy Joe was, and then I stayed there for about 45 minutes, and I leave. The only other person I talked to was Kelsey. Well, the one other person was Kelsey, who was the girlfriend of Seth. And the day I met with, the first time I talked to her on the telephone, that's the first thing she told me. I knew you was going to be calling because Aaron told me that you're going to be calling, but I can't talk to you about emails. Now, as an investigator, innocent investigator, meaning no political agenda, I'm thinking to myself, what's up with the emails? I wonder if the clue lies within the emails, and so I didn't talk to her about emails, and we talked, and then I asked if I could meet with her in D.C. because I was out of town when I talked to her, and she said, yeah, meet me down by my job, and she said I can talk better in person. And I have this all in the report. I don't have the report in front of me, but anyway, I met with her at her job. We met at a corner bakery here in D.C., 17th Street, and we talked, and she was pretty forthcoming, but she said that the only thing about the job she could tell me is that Seth was having issues with two supervisors on the job. And I said, okay, well, that's good information because, that could be a link to solving the case. You're having problems with a person, So I said, well, what's the supervisor's name? She said, I can't give you that information. I said, why not? She said, well, I don't really know their names, but I was told not to talk about his job, anything pertaining to his job. And I said, by who? She said, Aaron. Okay. So we left it alone. So that was two examples of the issue about the emails coming up. And I've spoken with Joe and Aaron during the course of this time period, which again started in March of this year when I first started working for them. And each time we've had conversations, I bring up the possibility or the fact that in order to solve this case, regardless of what was the job, whether it was a job, whether it was a box street robbery, whatever it was, doesn't matter to me. Let's find the bad guy. And I'd always say, I need to get more information though about his relationships on the job. And every time I would say that, Aaron would just totally go off. I mean, literally. I told you don't be looking at the job. I've investigated it. And there was a few other things that was interesting. So, for example, I asked Aaron, did the police department confiscate his computer? Because I wanted to know where the computer was. If it's a murder, obviously, and they're going to go through his computer. He said, don't ask me anything about computers or emails. I said, but Aaron, we're trying to find the murderer. And there's a possibility that a link may be on the computer through an email exchange, discussion, website, something. He said, no. He said, I have the computer, meaning him. I said, okay, well, can I take a look at it? I'll even come down there and be with you. I just want to go. He said, what are you looking for? I said, anything that could indicate that maybe Seth was having problems with someone. No, I've already checked it. Don't worry about it. All right. So I got off of that. Then I said, cell phone. I understand from reading media reports that Seth had made several telephone calls the night of his murder, before he was murdered, to several people. And I got that information from Kelsey, his girlfriend. I said, who has his cell phones now? He said, I don't know. I said, well, Kelsey tells me you have his cell phones. Well, I don't have the cell phones. I said, well, does the police department have the cell phone? Because there's information, maybe he talks to the killer before he got killed. I don't know, He said, no, we won't worry about the cell phone. Okay, so who did he talk to that night? I said, can we get access to his records, his AT&T records, and just get a copy of the numbers that, that he dialed that night or that dialed him that night? No, we can't. So, all right. So he wasn't obviously, literally, he was pushing back on this whole idea of checking cell phones. Seth went to a party at 10 o'clock that night of his death, at 10 o'clock p.m., before he went to the bar where he was at, Joe Capone's bar. And he was there with some friends. This is just a good example as to the pushback I got from Aaron. Well, Kelsey told me about the party. Well, I hadn't heard about the party from anyone else. So I said, okay, I'm going to try to find out who was at that party and whether or not the police department interviewed people at that who was at that party to maybe get some clues, right? And I mentioned it to Aaron, and to Aaron. I said, Aaron, I understand Seth went to a party. He said, yeah. I said, well, can I get the names of the person or people that gave that party so I can go talk to them? What do you need to talk to them about? Seth died at 4 a.m. I said, I know, but I'm thinking it could have been someone at the party. Maybe he had an interaction with, guy follows him. You know how it goes. So he goes, no, that didn't happen. And then again, I said, how do you know this? I'm telling you, right, it didn't happen. Now, all I want you to do is work on the botched robbery theory. That's it. So that's where we are. And that's the frustration I have, because if you really want the case solved, then you have to let the investigator do his job. That hasn't been the case here. Now, it's a little bit different, and this is important with Joe. And Joe, I enjoy talking to Joe, the father, because he doesn't appear to have any hidden agendas. You know what I mean? He's not, like, for example, the computers. I didn't even know that Seth had 2 cell phones. Joel told me. Joel said, yeah, he had just bought another cell phone. I said, really? I said, had the other cell phone been activated? He said, Rod, I'm not sure, but Aaron should know because Aaron has the cell phone. And then that's when I asked Aaron about the second cell phone, and he said, no, I don't know what he's talking about. So real quickly, I'll give you the short but complete version of this. We have been working on trying to uncover information pertaining to the death of Seth Rich. Well, Fox News reporter, Malia Zimmerman, had come across a witness, or a person who was an informant, I should say, an anonymous source who indicated that he knew for a fact, without a doubt, that emails were sent from Seth's computer to WikiLeaks. Now, she notified me of this informant's information and informed me that this individual is very credible. Okay, that's interesting. And this guy worked as a federal investigator, maybe associated with the FBI. Now, if this guy, what he's saying is true, then the family needs to know about this, and Fox News is going to go with that story and report that on Tuesday of this week. So immediately, when she notified me, Malia, about this information, I said, well, that kind of makes sense in a way, because with everybody pushing back on this email thing and the family, and they're so protective of the email, it leads me to think that perhaps there were some communication between Seth Rich and WikiLeaks. Now, that's it. Perhaps there were some communications based on the totality of everything the craziness that's been going on with this email and computer stuff. And now this guy's saying he knows for a fact. So what did I do? I immediately called Chief Newsom at the police department, who I know very well. And I didn't get him, but I sent him an email. And I said, Chief, I need to talk to you right away. I just learned some information, major information, about the Seth Rich case, and it may be related to WikiLeaks and this Russian hacking thing. We need to talk as soon as possible. Chief Newsom emailed me back, Rod, not a problem, but I want you to talk to my director of communications for the police department. Okay, I got those emails, by the way, right? So I immediately get an email from the director of communications from the police department, and I tell this guy, I said, I need to talk to you. I got this information. He said, okay, I'll call you at 12 noon. He calls me at 12 noon, and I shared this information. I said, look, I just learned that there's an FBI agent or a former FBI agent who says he knows for a fact that emails were sent from Seth Rich's computer to WikiLeaks. I said the police department needs to know about this because that may hold the key to solving the murder. The guy goes, really? I said, yeah. And I said, and a story is going to come out on Tuesday regarding this. You guys need to know about this because that may hold the clue to solving the murder. He goes, really? I said, yeah. I said, I don't know who this FBI informant is. I just learned of this through Fox News. I said, but I thought it was important that I get you this information so you guys can look into it. He said, okay, well, thanks for sharing that with us. I said, okay, great. So I get a telephone call from the detective, the lead detective handling the case. And I tell him the exact same thing. And he said, okay, Rod, well, let's meet. I said, okay, great. Let's meet at the Library of Congress on the 6th floor in the cafeteria. Now, this conversation took place on Friday, last Friday. We said, let's meet Monday on the 6th floor of the Library of Congress. There's a cafeteria up there. Library of Congress. Well, Monday rolled around, and I called him 2 or 3 times. He never called me back. And I thought that was strange because I was like, why isn't he calling me back? But anyway, he didn't call me back because I wanted to talk about this new information we learned, especially before it hits the news media. But then I said, well, let me call Joel Rich and let him know because this is important. This could be a major, major break in the case. So I called Joel and I said, Joel, I wanted to call you and tell you about this new information Fox News has uncovered that I think could be a break in the case regarding emails possibly being sent to WikiLeaks. Joe said, stop, Rod. Stop right there. I know all about it. I said, you do? He said, yeah. He said, a Fox News reporter called me this morning and told me about this. I said, okay, well, the story is going to hit tomorrow, but I think you need to know. And I said, by the way, I called the police department and tried to share the information with them. He said, okay. He said, well, what do you think we can do? I said, well, let's wait until the story comes out and actually see what's in it. He said, okay. Well, I met face-to-face with Della Cameron. He met with me over at my office down in D.C. And nice guy. We talked a long time. But he kept telling me the entire conversation, Rod, I can't tell you anything. I can't. I said, why? He said, well, they want us to not say anything about this case and kind of like stand down. Really? I said, who? He said, come on, man, I can't tell you anymore. You know that. He said, I'll be working over at CCB, which is the Central Cell Block. That's where officers go when they, when they screw up or whatever. So I said, okay, I hear you. He said, I don't want you to throw me under the bus. I said, Della Cameron, I will not throw you under the bus. I'm not going to mention anything. He said, well, I can't tell you anything much, Rod.
And then when he got to the hospital, based on the reports that did later leak, he wasn't fatally shot. There was an eyewitness report from someone who was in the OR. I think it was a teaching hospital, and this guy was like a visiting doctor, and he wrote an account about what happened, and he was basically operated on and released into his room. And everyone who was operating on him, everyone who did this work on him, was sure that he was going to survive. And then all of a sudden, he was moved from his normal hospital room into a special unit of the hospital that's like locked off for special cases, and then he died. These are things that made it into the public domain, and a lot of people have been investigating what happened to Seth Rich from the time that he left the bar where he had a drink that night, and on the way home, on the phone with his girlfriend, and every minute of what happened. And then another very striking thing about this case, right? In the US, especially in Washington, D.C., almost every road corner has a camera, either business operated cameras or police cameras. And one investigator found that on that route, from him leaving the bar to where he was shot, there were 23 cameras, but none of the footage was ever used or surfaced or requested by anybody. And when you think about this, when you are the DC police and you are investigating a murder, Why would you not knock on the door of every house that had a camera on the path that Seth took and get their footage? These private investigators knocked at all these doors and said, no one ever asked us for the footage. That is very unusual in a homicide investigation. Wouldn't you agree?
If there really was a true investigation, because the FBI
Exactly.
took it over.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that I know that, but what I do know, based on the information that other investigators have found, is that there was no proper investigation into the killing of Seth Rich. And the question is why?
How did the DNC, you think, discover that Rich was the one who had...
Look, I have no idea, and I honestly don't even know what happened, what led to his death. I mean, we can all just speculate. All that I do know from all the evidence that is now out there is that it wasn't properly investigated.
Yeah. I have some insight that I got from this former CIA guy who's friends with Sy and Butowsky. Put them together, and what he told me. And actually, I contacted Hersh when this came out, because I wrote a couple of stories about this for Consortium News before I was the editor. And I contacted Sy, is this your voice? Yes, those clowns, this was email, those clowns down in Texas, they recorded me without telling me. That's all he would say to me. Yes, it's my voice, but those clowns in Texas, meaning Butowsky, didn't tell me I was being recorded. What my CIA guy told me is that Sy does stand by what he said, but that the release of that recording dried up all of his sources. He was still working on the story. So that's why he was so pissed off at Butowsky. Because I've often wondered, why isn't he writing something about many people? Why isn't he going to write something about this? From his FBI source, who says that they have the computer, they analyzed it, because the release of that tape screwed up the investigation of the story.
Yeah.
That's why he was pissed off. But what Sy does say on that tape is that the FBI has the computer and that Rich emailed these documents and emails to WikiLeaks. Would that be possible? To compress files of that size into emails?
And the metadata of the files wouldn't be changed. So you can take the files off the memory stick, copy them onto your computer, and pack them into a zip file and email the zip file. The metadata of the files inside the zip file would still be the metadata that includes the original copying from the DNC onto a memory stick. That is how
Binney found out about this.
How this group of experts could do the forensic analysis on the data.
So if a miracle happened and the Department of Justice said we want to talk to you about Seth Rich, you're able to do that? Yeah. They'd be okay with that?
Yeah.
You know,
that offer is still on the table. That has never changed, and
you have no doubt. You're 100% certain.
Yeah.
The
DNC files.
Yes.
And I believe the DNC access, which led to an email being created that Podesta clicked on and that allowed the attacker to infiltrate.
Was Rich?
I think Seth would have needed some support, someone he trusted, in order to do everything the way he did. If I was Seth, I wouldn't have trusted the person I put him in touch with, you know? So I would have looked somewhere close, someone I can trust, you know, who has some IT knowledge. It hasn't been properly investigated at all.
Nobody knows where his computer is, apparently.
And isn't that in itself the biggest indictment against the government? Because they did get his laptop. Everybody confirms that.
Yeah.
They did get his laptop, and where the fuck is it? Like, how can that disappear? That is a crucial piece of evidence in the custody of the United States government, and it disappears. If that is not an indication of foul play, what is? That in itself says enough. The fact that something like that happens is outrageous.
I mean, this is the entire fabrication that the government's been performing here in this Russiagate on everything. It's everything they've done is a fabrication. Guccifer 2 is a fabrication. It's provable by the forensics that we found. And I put this in a court case, in an affidavit. So, and the government now is backing away from it, saying, "Oh, well, the Russian hack isn't relevant anyway, so it's only about lying." Okay, when in fact the entire affidavit they submitted to get a warrant to do the search in the beginning was fundamentally based on the Russian hack and saying that this person was involved. That's the Roger Stone case.
Well, I mean, that was just the one part. The other part, and the main part, with the Guccifer 2, was another part in that Mueller indictment and so on. Well, I mean, we had forensic evidence that we could show that it wasn't. The guy claimed it was a hack from Russia or from Romania. He claimed he was a Romanian, but he said he was hacking it into the DNC and pulling the data across. Well, we proved that you couldn't do that. It wouldn't go across at the download speeds that he posted. He posted all these articles out there, and we calculated the download speed on every article. And each article said, the highest one we have is 49.1 megabytes per second. The lowest one was 19 point something megabytes per second. None of them would go across the web. The fastest we tried it from Albania, Yugoslavia, Belgrade, and several places in the Netherlands and in the UK between data centers in New Jersey and London. And we could show and demonstrate forensically that you couldn't get it across. The fastest we could get was between those two data centers, and the one in New Jersey and the one in London, and that was only 12 megabytes per second. It was little less than one-fourth the necessary capacity to send the highest rate that we had calculated from the Guccifer 2 data. Plus, Guccifer 2 put out two batches of data. One was the 5th of July of 2016. The other was the 1st of September of 2016. So if you looked only at minutes, seconds, and milliseconds, those two files would merge without conflict into one. And so you ended up having one file downloaded once and then separated. He didn't go into figuring out how he separated them, but he did separate into two files and then did a range change on the date and the hour on the one file on 1 September. And posted it as two. So he's playing with the data. He's playing with us. This is total fabrication. It's a fake. This guy's been a fake from the beginning. Obviously, my sense is all the timing we had on all the data that he had showed he was in the United States, in the East Coast or Central Time Zone. And we had one case, I think, in the West Coast Time Zone. But all those timestamps were in the U.S., not over in Europe somewhere. And besides, the high speed of download showed that you couldn't transfer that across the internet. So it wasn't a hack, and we could prove that. And then the other part was all the DNC data that the Mueller indictment said the Russians got and gave to WikiLeaks. Well, when we looked at the WikiLeaks posting of all the metadata, all the DNC emails, the three batches, one on the 23rd of September, one on the 25th of September, and one on the 26th of August. All those items, there were 35,813 emails in there. All of them showed a last modified time rounded up to an even numbered second, which meant that it was the file format, a FAT format, the file allocation table format in the process that automatically changed those. So that meant it was read because that file is used to read data to a thumb drive or a CD-ROM or a little storage device. So that says that, hey, there's the evidence in that says this data was physically transported before WikiLeaks could post it. Now, this is basic evidence, that they're ignoring. They don't even talk about this. And then there was Craig Murray, who said he met with somebody, and Craig Murray was the former British ambassador to Uzbekistan, I believe it was. And he said that he met with someone on the American University campus in Washington, someone who was involved in the transfer of data to WikiLeaks. And then KimDotCom said he helped people get the data to WikiLeaks. And then, you had JulianAssange, who said it wasn't the Russians. So you had all of this evidence that said it wasn't the Russians and forensic proof to show that it was something locally downloaded. And so it was physically transported, all of this stuff before WikiLeaks got it and before Guccifer 2 got it. It was all physically transported.
So
it's a matter of, it's really a matter of not allowing anything that is contrary to the generally accepted narrative of the mainstream media and fundamentally the Democratic Party.
Well, and then they merge the Russian collusion hoax, as that was falling, into this Ukraine hoax based on this telephone call that the president made to President Zelensky. And in that call, I think the magic word he uttered that got him in trouble was CrowdStrike. Because CrowdStrike was essentially the firm that was utilized to analyze the DNC servers that they were in fact hacked, when in fact they got no evidence, do they, Bill?
No, in fact, they controlled the access to the DNC servers, and they did supposedly they did the analysis, but they never produced a final report. By the way, as far as I know, it's never been produced, and it's something that they allege that they've done, but they have not given the basic raw data to the FBI to verify or validate. So that means, very simply put, there's no control of evidence in any court of law that they want to take it to. They simply did not have control of the evidence. As far as I know, they still don't. So, why? I mean, and these folks simply are not coming forward with that, and they kept that very secret and wouldn't let anybody see it. So, again, they're controlling the basic evidence that should be public. And they're basically it's making it hiding everything that they call evidence. It's the same with the Schiff committee. They're hiding everything. It's a matter of they don't really have anything. That's the point. And again, it's just too bad that we are quite prepared to testify in the court that these things exist and that we were a part of some. I mean, that's not a problem because we know what the program names and everything are. So it's not a question. I mean, it's not just one program too. There are many of them.
Many. That's right. Many.
So it's not this is nothing new. I mean, they've been doing this for years. It's not damaging to the national security. It is exposing the crimes that they're committing. Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, they just are pushing the fabrication that the government has pushed upon us in the Mueller indictment. And that was clearly challenged in court, in federal court, when one of the main arguments they had was that the Internet Research Agency was a troll for the Russian government, and it was one of the main arguments they were making. They were the ones who were doing the advertising on Facebook and so on. And the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, decided they would send lawyers into court to challenge that because they said they had no connection whatsoever with the Russian government. And in federal court, the judge ordered them to prove it. And they failed miserably. I mean, they had absolutely no proof. It was simply a wild allegation, another fabrication on the part of our Department of Justice and FBI and others. CIA was involved in that for sure as well, But the point is that this was a fabrication they submitted to the court. Now, this is not the first time they've done that. They did that in our case, too, in the case of the NSA whistleblowers. They fabricated evidence to submit to a judge who didn't know any better anyway. And this was a national security issue, and they're out to lunch on this. They have no idea what's going on. So they simply said, this is very serious, so I'll sign the warrant. So that's how they ended up in our houses getting guns pointed at me anyway, and my wife and son. But in there were fabrications, and made-up lies. And they also did that they tried to draft an indictment. And again, they were fabricating lies. And we listed out all these lies. And somebody at the Department of Justice felt so bad about that they sent us a draft copy of that indictment. So we had listed all of the lies that they were telling about us and all the things that we were prepared to deal with in court, as well as malicious prosecution. We had evidence of malicious prosecution on their part. And it was pretty obvious, and we had them dead to rights. That's why they ran away from us. But again, it's this Department of Justice, the FBI, and the CIA, and all of them coming together to concoct lies to get rid of people they don't like or people they want to silence. And the IRA made it very clear. I mean, the judge in that case said, you are no. He basically admonished them and really ripped them a new one, and basically said, you will not mention this again. You have libeled these people, concocted this, this whole fabrication, and you have proven absolutely nothing here.
Bill, many people say, well, why all of a sudden did the government stop? Why did they start doing this thing about fabricating evidence and lying about evidence? Bill, this isn't something new. This has been going on for years, and as you mentioned earlier on, it happened to you.
Yes, and in fact, the FISA court, they themselves discovered that the FBI had lied to them in getting 75 warrants back in August of 2002 is when that article came out. So. And that was published, and they openly admitted it, and they did absolutely nothing about it. Just like, what has the FISA court done with all the lying they were doing with the Steele dossier?
Good point.
I mean, it's the same thing. They're still being lied to, and they know it, and they have done zero about it. They could have held these people in contempt. They could have issued citations against them for prosecuting for perjury in the court, So I told him I was ready to testify, and so, and they're slow rolling that one too. So it's a matter of, but we're still going. So we're not dead yet. So we're still trying. But again, the judges are, they should be a little more forceful here. I mean, I don't know why they aren't doing this. I mean, they all take an oath to defend and protect the Constitution. It's a part of their job. It's their whole job description is built around that. I mean, that's the president has a special where he has to not just protect and defend, but also preserve. He has the charter to preserve the Constitution. So that's where he basically meaning that he's not allowed to change it. In other words, unilaterally, which is what's been happening. They've been unilaterally doing this behind the secret door. There's that secret door again. Once they go behind it, you can't ever tell what they're going to do.
So you put all this stuff together, and you've got to say, there's a con game going on here. It's a con game that was given real life when John Kennedy was assassinated. Because, as most of us know, the CIA had a role in that, a big role. And Allen Dulles, who had been the head of the CIA and was cashiered by Kennedy months before, somehow he weaseled his way onto the Warren Commission and became pretty much the director of the whole commission. Now, people thought that was a little odd at the time. I mean, the CIA was suspected initially. And guess what Allen Dulles said? Conspiracy theorist, conspiracy theorist. And that has stuck from that day. Any question of JFK story, the official story, conspiracy theorist. And it works right down to this day. Seth Rich, murdered. Well, was it because he knew too much? Or I don't know.
I mean, the biggest point is what the government's been doing to us for all this period of time. What they don't understand is they've exposed themselves too, because all the evidence of what they've been doing is in the data they've been trying to protect, knowledge of being existing, like the bulk acquisition on everybody. I mean, that's acquisition on the members of the parliament and around the world, of our Congress, of the judges on the Supreme Court, of federal judges, state judges, it's everybody. So we have leverage, and it's stored for years. So now, I mean, like Mueller said in his interview with Bart Gellman in 2011, he talked about using the Stellar Wind program, or in his testimony in the Senate Judiciary Committee on the 30th of March of 2011, he said, we created this technology database with the Department of Defense where we can, with one query, go into it and get all the past emails and all future ones as they come in on a person. Now that tells you the extent of the intrusion in the communication system of the NSA. They're doing that and copying everything. And now we can use that now against them, because now we can discover everyone that's been involved with this, the extent of what they've been involved in included, and what exactly they did and how they coordinated the cover-up, So all of that information is there, and we can get back to it. And in order to cleanse ourselves of these basic sins against our founding principles, the Constitution, we need to do that.
you run for president, you need to be judged by what you have done. And I think the evidence is pretty clear.